Good morning, Summer, and good morning to everyone out there, and welcome to the wonderful world of foiling. Summer, tell me in your own sort of words, what do you see foiling to be in salon?
I think foiling is a great way in someone expressing themselves, and it just gives them some lightness throughout the face and some lightness through their hair, and it just changes up their personality and their mood.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. It's one of those integral and really important services in salon where we can create dimension and depth within your guest's color. Sometimes what we do is we almost try and overwork or do too much to create a look. It's really, really important for us when we understand what the world of foiling is all about. It's about putting lightness into your client's hair in specific areas or strategic placement of foils to create the illusion that there is a lot of light happening within the client's hair, creating exactly as you said, that lighter feel and look around the face, or bringing some lightness through the back of your client's hair. How we achieve that in the world of foiling is very, very dependent in terms of how we actually place those foils in. Now, there are multiple ways of placing foils into someone's hair, but the three key things that we have a look at with regards to placement is putting foils in a horizontal position, we place foils in a vertical position, and then there is the one that sits in between, which is the diagonal position. Now, those are three really important placement sort of strategies for us, because what you're going to find is depending on how you put them in and where you put them in will create certain results. So the first one we're going to have a look at is our vertical placement. If you imagine a vertical placement, vertical will run from top to bottom. So if you're going to go in and put a vertical foil in that way, and you imagine how that hair is going to fall, how would you see that hair to fall if you put a foil in that way? The hair is going to fall in a straight line down. What you'll find that does is that creates the illusion of length. So by foiling correctly in certain areas, you can actually create the illusion that the client's hair is longer than it should be. In a horizontal position, which is where we're going to place a foil in that way, that hair is going to fall down in a veil. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's if you imagine a window and you've got sort of curtains or blinds in a window. A vertical placement will be a lot of foils going in that run consecutively down, and that'll create the illusion of stripes.
Yeah.
When you put them in a horizontal, it's like having a blind that you pull down. That horizontal placement of foil will create the illusion that there is a veil of color. Now, the only two tricky things with these is if I put that on somebody's hair here on the side and they decide to pull their hair back, what is going to happen with that foil placement? It's going to form a veil and go back, giving us almost a solid sheet of blonde going back, which is amazing. But if the client lets their hair fall down, it's going to create a stripe. If we do the exact reverse and place a horizontal stripe over there, when the guest wears their hair down, it's going to create a veil of color. However, when they scrape the hair and they pull it back, it may form stripes going back. So the way to overcome those two is if we place the foil in on a diagonal position. On a diagonal position, when we place foils in a diagonal position, what you're going to find is when that hair falls down, it's going to create the illusion that there are veils of color that'll fall down in that direction. That client now decides they're going to pull their hair back. What we're going to do, in essence, is create the exact same look and feel when they pull their hair back. So either which way the client's hair falls, whether it's down or back, it's going to create the illusion that there's a lot of movement and softness in terms of color. And I think if we have a look at what's happening on trend today, clients are looking for that beautiful lived-in natural kind of feel, yet they still want something to happen. So horizontal is phenomenal. Vertical is great. The one that gives you the best result is your diagonal. Now, diagonal is anything that falls in between a horizontal and a vertical position. So even if you did a foil at that angle, it is still a diagonal position. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions?
Would you do it in a slice or would you do it in a weave if you were doing it diagonal? Because if you were to do it in a slice, if you were to put it back, would it still look curtained?
The great thing is on your diagonals, whether you do a slice or you do a weave, if we took a horizontal slice out of this client's hair and we did that on the client's hair, that's the section I'm going to take. I'm going to get little areas of color here, which would look like we've done a very fine weave. So the great thing is with doing a diagonal placement, you have the opportunity of doing a slice or a weave, and it'll give us a beautiful lived-in result. The difference between a slice and a weave is the amount of color that it's going to put in the hair. Where we go in and we do a very, very fine weave, I'm literally just picking up little pieces of hair, and that I would literally call a micro stitch. That's going to give us very, very fine amounts of blonde into my client's hair, which would work beautifully around a hairline to create that illusion that it's bright, but there's no solid lines. Where you go in and you do something with a slightly larger weave, that we would call more of a macro stitch. And what that is going to do is create more color in my client's hair. With clients that you find you do, curly haired clients, you want to go in the world of more of a macro stitch, because when you have a look at curly hair textures, that curly hair sort of groups together. If you go in and do a very fine micro stitch or a weave into a client with curly hair, you're going to lose the foil. Where you go in with a macro stitch on curly hair, it'll feel uncomfortable, but when that hair dries naturally, what you'll find is those curls will clump and you'll get excessive amounts of color that just look like it's lived in naturally. Where you go in and you take a absolute slice out of it, a slice is something that we would then not leave any hair out. And the great thing is, by slicing on a diagonal, it'll actually end up looking like a stitch. Which one of these two do you think is going to be the quickest? Stitches or slices?
Slices.
Slices definitely give us the ability to get color into the hair in a much quicker time frame. But as long as we make sure, if we're slicing and we slice on the correct angle, it'll create the illusion that we have got a weave happening in the hair. It gives beautiful veils of color in certain areas, the way that it falls, because remember, when we look at the diagonal placement, it gives us the way that the hair would fall naturally. And on a diagonal slice, it forms veils of color where you've got natural hair in between, and just creates the most beautiful illusion of movement in the hair without putting too much work behind it.
And you would obviously do finer slices instead of thick slices, so it's not looking too stripy.
The great thing with that is, depending on the consultation with your client, if their hair texture is very fine, you would then go in and do a much finer slice. If their hair texture is quite thick, you could go in and use something a little bit heavier in terms of your slice, because the thicker the hair texture is, the more color you want to put in. The quickest way of putting more color in is just increasing the size of your slice. Okay.